Well, what's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with a preview for the Shriners Hospital Open. Two things real quick before we get started here. I've gotten a lot of questions about how you can go use the tools that I've created. There's really two ways. There is a free trial on my site. It's dfsondemand.com. You don't have to pay for it for the first 7 days. Or what I'll do is like everybody else. If you subscribe and like the video, comment down below who you think is going to score the most DraftKings points under $8,000, and I'll pick two people and give them a free month, right? We'll see how that goes. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll do it more often. Also, after I post this video, I'm going to go back to the tools and I'm going to post some updated course history stuff. I'm going to post some updated tour stats and maybe some correlation stuff. So I'm hoping to get that out today. So you're not going to see it on this video, but you should see it in future weeks. And if you're on the site, you'll be able to see those tools there. All right, let's get into the golf. All right, so TPC Summerlin is the host this week. The tour is back in the United States, and no better place to start than TPC Summerlin. So it's in Las Vegas. Ton of course history here. This tournament's been played here for, I don't know, ever. I go back like what 10 or 11 years for my numbers, and it's been the host every year. So for our purposes, it's perfect course history. So we're going to talk a little bit about course history this week more than other weeks. But this course in general, it is a par 71, so you've got three par 5s. And the way this is usually set up is you don't really need to be particularly long here. The fairways are usually pretty dry. They run out, so those short hitters benefit. There's also not too much, we've seen short hitters win here, right? I think Ryan Moore's won here in the past. We've seen some guys really contend. So you don't need to be long, and there's not really a ton of pain if you miss the fairway, right? So you can kind of win this a lot of different ways. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but I think this is going to get into a second shot type course. Guys who can throw darts, guys who can take advantage of the par 4s. But let's chat about the cheat sheet here real quick. So if you're new, here is my cheat sheet that I put together on a weekly basis. Obviously, we have the most recent tournaments. We have tournament history here. The score is my score. That's my combination of course history, short-term form, and long-term form for these players. Basically, anything over a 0 is positive. That's above average. And then anything approaching 2 is really, really elite. So we don't have anybody approaching 2 this week, but we do have two guys over 1.5, which is Bryson DeChambeau and Webb Simpson. Really like both of those plays, especially because they both tend to be second shot type players. I mean, Bryson can bomb it a little bit, and his putter can heat up, but I would classify both of those guys kind of as second shot players. So I think that's going to be good for this week. We haven't seen either of these guys since the Tour Championship. Webb closed with a 6 at the BMW and a 4th at the Tour Championship. Took a couple weeks off, but really played well down the stretch of his season last year. Now, above those guys, so the other three guys at $10,000 or more are Fowler, the most expensive, $11,400, Tony Finau, $11,003, and then Jordan Spieth at $11,000. I'm super intrigued to see what the ownership on Jordan Spieth is going to be. Like if you just look at this on the surface, he should not really be owned here. Fowler's playing better. Finau's playing better. Bryson's playing better. Webb's playing. Like he's in ultimate sandwich pricing. This is Spieth, who did not even make the Tour Championship at the end of last year. The thing that scares me a little bit about fading Spieth is he's now basically had off since mid-September, right? He has, outside of the Ryder Cup, right? Has had off since mid-September, and that's like a long time to get the game into shape. So I'm wondering if he's been able to figure it out. Obviously in golf, we don't really know what these guys do when they have a month off, but I think it's reasonable to believe that Spieth has put in a lot of hours on the range. So I'm not nearly as willing to fade him this week after having this kind of stretch off as I would be where he was in the midst of just playing bad and he was playing back to back to back. So that's kind of my dilemma with Spieth. Interested to hear what you guys think about that. All right, I'm going to see if I can pull this stat because I think it's interesting. But basically, I like during the swing season, or definitely like right now, I want guys who've had success already this swing season. So like I mentioned, we don't know what Webb and Bryson and Fowler and it's like what have they been doing in like their 5 weeks off or 4 weeks off? We know some of these guys have been playing and they've been playing well. So people who fall into that category would be Patrick Cantlay. So last year's champ, right? Your defending champion who finished 7th at the WGC last week, 17th at the Safeway. He's been playing and playing well during the swing season. Gary Woodland took the Asian tour or took the Asian swing, tallied a 5th and a 2nd at the CIMB and the CJ Cup. And then Chesson Hadley also had a 2nd place finish at the CIMB. So those are a couple guys that I'd probably be looking to target in this mid-range just because I know what they've done, right? Now, I don't have, when my data provider adds back in the Sanderson Farms numbers, I'll add those back in here. Cameron Champ obviously coming off the win, but then you look down here in like this mid, between 8 and 9,000, it's a little bit of a trouble spot for me. You can find guys who have spouted off for either a high finish in the last 12 weeks, like one of them, or a high finish at some point here at TPC Summerlin, but not necessarily both of those things. The only guy who really kind of hits both of those would be Ryan Moore, who had a 2nd at the Safeway, but played really poorly in Asia, like literally almost dead last. I mean, 66th and 61st in Asia, those fields are only like 73 players. So he's got the 2nd at the Safeway, and then, of course, we kind of talked about he's won this in 2012. He's got a handful of other top 10s under his belt as well. But that's really the only guy who kind of even gets to both of them. Kevin Na, Las Vegas native, he's won here in the past. He's got a 2nd place in 2015, but his results have been all over the place. I think there's going to be a little bit of sexiness around Sung Jae Im, who is right here at $8,000. Played really well at the Safeway with a 4th place finish, but we don't have much history on him, right? He was the money leader on the web.com last year, so we're doing a lot of speculating. I'm gonna quickly go to the strokes gain stuff here, but I do just want to point out some of these guys that finished well at the Sanderson last week, because I certainly think that they're in play. Obviously, Cameron Champ was your winner. Then you get Corey Connors, who finished 2nd. We're going to talk a little bit about Denny McCarthy, maybe. We'll talk a little bit about Dylan Meyer. Those guys all, with 7th or best. DJ Trahan, he's going to pop up in a little bit. So guys worth considering when you're going back and looking at who potentially to roster this week. All right. Oh, and before I move on, the one guy that I did think popped out was Abraham Answer. So here's Answer, who has not played here. Let me see if I get this right. He's played here twice in the last 3 years, has never made the cut, but played a lot better down the stretch of this year, right? So even in his last 7 tournaments, he had 3 top 7s, including a 5th at the CIMB, which was obviously just a couple weeks ago. So I think he's most certainly in play. But let's go actually look at some of the strokes gain stuff, because I think that this is where this is most important. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, there is this tool that I have here that allows you to kind of go back however many weeks you want and see the strokes gain numbers. What I'm looking at is fairly interesting here. So the guys on the bottom and right of this chart are where you want to be on the trend line. So someone like a Lucas Glover, believe it or not, who's averaging 1.7 strokes gained per round, that is essentially, it is more than what Bryson has done. 1.59 strokes gained per round. Now, we can talk about what tournaments they've played and all that good stuff, but basically, Lucas Glover is, what's that, $2,500 cheaper. So you'll see where these guys kind of lie. The way this is shaping up is, right now I'm looking at the last 20 weeks. So the way this is shaping up, guys that are like Gary Woodland, Patrick Cantlay are interesting. Abraham Answer is interesting. And then you get down towards even the bottom values. You start looking at like a DJ Trahan, who's going to pop up consistently here. A Danny Lee, a Joel Dahman, a Sam Burns, a Kevin Tway. Guys that, we've seen some good success for. If you want to go more recently, so this is just the last 10 weeks. So this is going to be tight because we haven't had a whole lot of events that have strokes gained numbers since August 22nd, which is the last 10 weeks here. But when you look at this, the guys that lead the way are Tony Finau and Bryson DeChambeau. And then you get Dylan Meyer, and again, DJ Trahan pops up here. So we've now gone 10 and 20 weeks, and both of these guys seem to be popping up. And then if we want to go really kind of the opposite, I mean, we can do the last year and do the last 52 weeks. This is going to give us pretty different numbers here. DeChambeau continues to lead the way. Webb Simpson, Tony Finau, Ricky Fowler, no surprise. But the values are Roberto Castro, who actually finished, let me see here, T5 last week at the Sanderson. He played well. Shot a 65 on Sunday to close the gap. He got, I don't know if he ever got too close. He lost by 7 strokes, but Cameron Champ kind of ran away with it. So Castro's most certainly in play here. Carlos Ortiz as well. And it's interesting to see this because I'm wondering how much of last week actually helped these guys in the strokes gained, because both of those guys finished top 5 last week, and they're really popping off here. Joaquin Niemann is another one, and Niemann actually... Where does Niemann, what's his price? $8,400. This guy's going to win a golf tournament this year. Interested to see when that's going to be. He pops up here as well. When we scroll down to the who's hot and who's not chart, again, since we've had so few strokes gained calculated tournaments in the last few weeks, in the last month or so, these numbers are a little iffy, but I think they're worth noting. Dylan Meyer, hottest player on the course. I'm the hottest player in the field, excuse me, averaging 2.2 strokes per round better than his long-term average. DJ Trahan, Adam Schenk, round out the top 3. No surprise that all 3 of those guys played well last week. On the far end of it, there is one guy who is absolutely brutal right now, and it's Wes Bryan, who... I mean, he's losing 6 strokes per round to his long-term average. The next worst guy is Chesson Hadley at 1.9. So just to kind of give you an idea of how bad that is. Again, take that for what it's worth. Now this is the spot where I really think we're gonna need to talk about. I'm big time thinking that this is going to be a strokes gained approach week for us. So I've got this sorted by just guys who are in the field, just looking at strokes gained approach, and I'm looking at the last 20 weeks. That takes us back to about mid-June. The leaders in strokes gained approach are actually guys I would not have necessarily guessed here. Joel Dahman and DJ Trahan. Again, those guys continue to pop up, 1 and 2. Mackenzie Hughes, Lucas Glover, who we saw again. Sam Ryder and Hunter Mahan are your first 6 guys. You don't get to a big name player or anybody decent until you get to Gary Woodland, who is 7th here, and then Ricky Fowler is 9th. So I was interested to see these, I don't want to call them no-name players, but these are not the names I was expecting to see. You don't get to Bryson until like 14th here. And then if we actually go, let's just add a little volatility to this and add in, just do the last 10 weeks. So again, we're getting such a smaller sample size. There's going to be more volatility. Sam Ryder's number 1. And I actually note that Jordan Spieth pops up on this list now. So with all the detriment, or that's not the right word, of all the kind of hate that Jordan Spieth has received over the course of at the end of the last year, when you look at his stretch, which in results was not great, still a top 10 player in strokes gained approach for the last 10 weeks. That surprises me and kind of leans me more towards having more exposure to him than I would expect. I'll be interested to see what the numbers shake out for as far as what his projected ownership might be as this week goes on. But worth noting that he's actually still in there in the last 10 weeks. And I mistyped it, but it's the same purposes. If we go to the last 41 weeks, you get some more interesting names. So this is more of a long-term strokes gained approach. Joaquin Niemann, number 1. Joel Dahman continues to pop up every which way you slice this. Then you get, I don't know if it's Max Homa or Max Hama, and Bryson DeChambeau and Roberto Castro rounding out the top